In a glittering city where wealth defined worth, Abigail Voss reigned as one of its most dazzling stars. At 26, she lived in a sprawling penthouse atop a sleek skyscraper, her life a showcase of luxury and excess. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating her designer wardrobe and priceless art. Abigail stood before her mirror, her sharp green eyes tracing her flawless reflection, a diamond necklace glinting at her throat. She sipped champagne from a crystal flute, even breakfast a display of status, her every move calculated for effect. Below, in the pristine courtyard, her gardener, Grace, tended to the flowers under the relentless sun. Grace, 32, moved with quiet purpose, her hands calloused from years of labor, her face radiant despite her simple attire. To Abigail, Grace's natural beauty and contentment were an insult, a spark of jealousy igniting in her cold heart. "She's too happy for someone so poor," Abigail muttered, watching Grace prune roses with a serene smile. A wicked thought took root as she swirled her drink, a smirk curling her lips. "Why not invite her to my gala?" she mused. "A perfect chance to make her the fool of the night." Abigail's annual gala was the city's grandest affair, a gathering of the elite in a lavish ballroom overlooking the skyline. Guests arrived in couture gowns and tailored suits, their wealth a silent competition of jewels and supercars. Abigail thrived in this world, the queen of every conversation, flaunting her latest conquests, a villa, a private jet. But this year, she craved something more, a spectacle to cement her dominance through cruelty. She set her flute down and strode outside, the heat hitting her like a slap as she approached Grace. "Good morning, Miss Abigail," Grace said, wiping sweat from her brow, her smile warm and unguarded. "Grace, my dear," Abigail began, her tone honeyed with false kindness. "I've been admiring your work." Grace's eyes brightened, a flicker of pride in her expression. "Thank you, miss. I do my best." Abigail fought a grimace. How naive, she thought. "That's why I have a special offer for you." "A reward?" Grace asked, tilting her head, curiosity softening her weathered features. "Yes," Abigail purred, savoring her trap. "My gala's this weekend, the biggest event of the year. I want you there." Grace blinked, stunned. "Me? At your party? I wouldn't know how to act among such people." "Don't worry," Abigail said, waving a hand. "You'll be my guest of honor. I'll handle everything. Your dress, all of it." Grace hesitated, a shadow of doubt crossing her face, but the allure of the invitation won her over. "It's too generous, Miss Abigail," she said, her smile returning. "I'd be honored to join you." "Wonderful," Abigail replied, patting Grace's shoulder, her grin masking the malice beneath. As she walked away, Abigail let out a sharp laugh, the game set in motion, her victory already assured. Back in her penthouse, she dialed her assistant, Margot. "Find a dress for Grace. Something absurd, oversized, hideous." Margot paused on the line, then replied, "Of course, Miss Voss. Any color in mind?" "Surprise me," Abigail said, smirking. "Just ensure it screams embarrassment." She hung up, imagining Grace stumbling into the gala, a clown among kings, the laughter echoing in her ears. This wasn't just a prank. It was power, a reminder of her ability to bend others to her will. Abigail had grown up in privilege, her parents clawing their way to riches through ruthless ambition. Her father once crushed a rival by leaking secrets. Her mother bankrupted a friend over a petty slight. They taught her that kindness was weakness, that success demanded a heart of stone. Now, with more wealth than she could spend, Abigail found thrill only in control, in breaking others down. Grace's beauty and humility gnawed at her, a mirror to her own emptiness she refused to face. The gala night arrived, the ballroom aglow with chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and arrogance. Abigail descended in a silver gown, a vision of elegance, while Grace sat beside her in a garish orange dress. The outfit was a monstrosity, too big, with ruffles like a circus tent, clashing with Grace's quiet grace. "Stay close, Grace," Abigail said, her voice dripping with mock warmth. "You're my star tonight." Grace nodded, nervous but trusting, unaware of the trap tightening around her. They stepped from the limousine, cameras flashing as Abigail posed, then pulled Grace into the spotlight. The crowd hushed, then buzzed with stifled laughs as Grace emerged, awkward in her oversized gown. "Who's that with Abigail Voss?" a reporter called, smirking. "My gardener, Grace," Abigail announced, her smile sharp. "I thought she'd enjoy a taste of our world." Titters rippled through the onlookers, Grace blushing but holding her head high, oblivious to the jest. Inside, the elite circled like sharks, their polished smiles hiding their delight in the spectacle. Abigail led Grace to a group of tech moguls, her voice bright. "Meet Grace, my gardener extraordinaire." "Charmed," said Victor, a startup tycoon, his grin mocking. "What's your take on quantum computing?" Grace faltered, then smiled. "I don't know much, sir, but I'd guess it's less messy than tending roses." The group laughed, loud and cutting, Abigail basking in their amusement, her plan unfolding perfectly. She paraded Grace through the night, each awkward exchange fueling the crowd's cruel glee. At one point, Grace slipped away to the restroom, and Abigail felt a fleeting pang. Had she overplayed her hand? But the thought dissolved as friends swarmed her, praising her bold move, and she reveled in their approval. In the marble restroom, Grace stared at her reflection, the garish dress a stark contrast to her weary eyes. Tears welled as she splashed water on her face, whispering, "Why am I here? I don't belong." She considered fleeing, but her promise to Abigail and her own stubborn pride kept her rooted. Straightening, she adjusted the ridiculous ruffles, vowing to face the night with whatever dignity she could muster. Back in the ballroom, Abigail held court, her laughter sharp until a new figure silenced the room. An elderly man entered, tall, silver-haired, in an understated suit that screamed quiet wealth. It was Leonard Hart, a revered philanthropist whose name carried weight across continents. His presence shifted the air, every eye turning as he crossed the room with purpose. "Abigail Voss," Leonard said, his voice warm yet piercing, extending a hand. "I've heard of your flair." "Mr. Hart," Abigail replied, masking her nerves. "The honor's mine. I hope it's all good things." Leonard's smile was enigmatic. "Oh, you're unforgettable. And your guest tonight? She's quite the choice." As if on cue, Grace returned, her resolve firm despite the stares, catching Leonard's keen gaze. "Allow me to introduce Grace," Abigail said, her tone smug. "My gardener, here for a bit of fun." The room stilled, waiting for Leonard's reaction, Abigail anticipating his amusement to seal her triumph. But Leonard's face softened, and he stepped toward Grace, offering his hand. "Grace, it's truly a pleasure." Confusion flickered in Abigail's chest as Grace shook his hand, her voice steady. "Thank you, Mr. Hart." Then, astonishingly, Leonard turned to the crowd. "Friends, let's honor someone remarkable tonight." A murmur rose as he continued, "Grace isn't just a gardener. She's the silent benefactor." Gasps echoed. Abigail's smirk fading as Leonard's words sank in. The silent benefactor? Yes, Leonard said, his voice rising. A woman who gave up a fortune to live simply, helping millions in secret. The room erupted in applause. Guests standing, their awe shifting from Abigail's jest to Grace's truth. She funded schools, hospitals, Leonard added, all while tending gardens, her wealth a quiet force for good. Abigail's world tilted. She'd mocked a legend the philanthropist whispered about in elite circles. Grace stood taller, the garish dress irrelevant, her presence commanding as she addressed the crowd. I'm Grace. And yes, I chose this life, she said. Wealth means nothing without purpose. A tech heiress rushed forward. Your grants saved my foundation. I had no idea it was you. Another chimed in. Your donations rebuilt our clinic. You're incredible, Grace. Abigail shrank back, the spotlight stolen, her cruelty exposed as the room celebrated Grace. Grace turned to her, eyes kind but firm. Abigail, I came tonight knowing your intent. Abigail stared at the floor, shame burning her cheeks. Why? Why work for me if you're this? Because work has honor, Grace said softly, and sometimes lessons come when we least expect them. I'm sorry, Abigail whispered, the words raw, her arrogance crumbling under Grace's quiet strength. Grace touched her arm. I forgive you. Let this be a start, not an end. Leonard approached, his tone gentle but stern. Abigail, you erred, but redemption's possible. He smiled at Grace. She's shown us what matters. Perhaps you can learn from her. Abigail nodded, humbled, a flicker of hope piercing her hardened shell. I'd like that. The gala ended, guests buzzing with Grace's story. Abigail left not as a victor, but a student. That night, she sat with her parents, their pride shaken, vowing to rethink their legacy of greed. The next day, Abigail joined Grace in the garden, pruning roses, finding peace in the simple act. Together, they began a journey. Abigail learning, Grace guiding, their story a beacon of change. In time, the tale of the heiress and her gardener spread, a reminder that true riches lie in kindness. If you like this story, please give it a like. Subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us sharing tales like this. We're so grateful. See you soon.